It's Wednesday night after a long day, and the last thing you want to do is cook dinner from scratch. But you still want a satisfying, tasty meal without the guilt? Enter your freezer's sidekick, Cauliflower. From thin and crispy cauliflower crust pizzas to all-natural white meat chicken tenders and more, Cauliflower is gluten-free always, satisfies every craving, and is ready in minutes. Cauliflower is available in freezer aisles nationwide. Visit eatcauliflower.com/where-to-buy to find a store near you.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its creators, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss a missing persons case on this podcast, please be sure to visit missingpersonspodcast.net. This episode may contain unsettling or disturbing subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Missing Persons, a podcast dedicated to spreading the word about people who have vanished under mysterious or unexplained circumstances and the family members who are looking for answers. I'm Jess Betancourt.
And I'm Mike Morford. Together we created this podcast to help give a voice to people who continue to look for their missing loved ones. In some cases, even after decades have gone by. In each episode, you'll hear from Jess giving listeners the backstory and the basic facts of the disappearance.
Then Mike will speak with someone who's intimately connected to the missing person, and his guest will share their story with us.
Please stay tuned at the conclusion of this episode to hear about our Patreon program and our commitment to help find people who have gone missing. We'll also share with you where you can find more information and how you can join our team and help our efforts. You'll get recommendations for other podcasts we think you'll enjoy, and more.
So sit back and enjoy this episode, and who knows, maybe you can help us find someone who's missing. Episode 7, Dale Dwayne Williams. Dale Dwayne Williams was born on July 15, 1956. In 1999, Dale, his wife Diana, and their daughters lived and worked in Nucla, Colorado. This is a tiny town about halfway between Telluride, Colorado, and Moab, Utah. Population not even 1,000. 42-year-old Dale owned the Pro Body Shop, an auto repair business. He was known to pretty much everyone in town and was well-liked because of his charisma, energy, and sense of humor. On the morning of May 27, 1999, Dale received a call at the auto body shop. A friend, Pastor Tom Ross, was present and overheard Dale's end of the conversation. Tom later said that his impression was that it was a woman on the other end of the line. Dale told the caller that he would drive to their location and would bring the wrecker. But then, when the caller said they just needed a jump, Dale said he would just bring the pickup. According to Tom Ross, nothing seemed amiss, although it was not common for Dale to go out on breakdown calls because he was not a mechanic. Nevertheless, off he went, driving his white 1995 Ford F-350 pickup bearing the auto body shop name and logo. Tom told investigators that Dale had headed out to assist a stranded motorist in Paradox Valley, just outside the town of Bedrock, about a 30-minute drive away. On the way out of town, Dale stopped at the place of business of his best friend and spoke with his friend's wife Tammy about an upcoming windshield repair. This was around 12:15 p.m. When Dale left the auto body shop, he left the doors unlocked and tools scattered around, an indication that he intended to return shortly. The family didn't question until later the fact that the stranded caller had supposedly been calling from a cell phone in the middle of a remote, mountainous region, a place that was very unlikely to have had cell phone service in 1999. Dale's wife Diana called him right around lunchtime to ask what his plans were for the midday meal. She and Dale jointly owned a video rental store in town, Showtime Movie Rentals, where she worked. When he didn't answer, she just assumed that he was busy. Even when he didn't come home that evening, Diana wasn't yet too concerned. Dale was known to stay late at the shop working on projects. But by the next morning, Diana was frantic. Around 6 a.m., she drove over to the shop and found that Dale had clearly left in haste with an intent to return. She checked in with Dale's mother, who had heard nothing from her son. After searching fruitlessly in all the usual spots for Dale, Diana called the police to report him missing. The Nucla Marshal's office undertook an investigation. poring over the Pro Body Shop premises and scouring the roads and riverbeds in 3 counties in western Colorado and eastern Utah via ground and air searches. As many as 40 residents and local law enforcement officials searched canyons, ravines, mines, dirt roads, and junkyards where Dale was known to scavenge for car parts. Volunteer phone operators took tips and canvassed residents. Nothing was found. Within days, the local papers were reporting that foul play was suspected. "This really isn't like him," stated Marshal Matthew Goodemuth. Everyone agreed that it would be uncharacteristic of Dale to just take off. The family began to think about anyone in Dale's past that could have intended him harm, and one person came to mind. Dale and Diana had a history with this man, who was a former high school classmate of Dale's. He and his wife had been friends with Dale and Diana until the time approximately a year earlier when the Williamses had helped this man's wife escape from the abusive relationship she was in with her husband. They assisted her in relocating to another state, and they refused to tell this man, Dale's former classmate, where she had settled. Diana told Unsolved Mysteries, "He was angry at Dale for helping his ex-wife move, and then we wouldn't tell him where she was or anything like that, and I feel like he was really angry with Dale for that." After they helped this man's wife relocate, some concerning and suspicious things began to happen. About a month after the former friend's wife left, Dale opened up his shop one morning and found that it had been burglarized. Photos were torn up and scattered on the ground. These were photos of the 2 couples, Dale and Diana, and the classmate and his now ex, together. What was even more disturbing were the bullets lying on the floor, and these bullets belonged to a .22 caliber revolver of Dale's that was discovered to be missing from the shop. It turned up a few days later in the drop box at the video store Dale and Diana owned. Needless to say, Dale and Diana were unnerved by these events. And it seems they were right to be nervous. Dale disappeared not too long after this. To help spread the word about her missing husband, Diana and friends placed missing posters regarding Dale's case around the small town. She noticed that the ones in the post office were repeatedly removed by someone, and every time she put up more, those were removed too. Police set up a hidden camera at the post office to see who was taking down the posters. The video captured footage of, guess who? The former classmate of Dale's, tearing down the posters. Lieutenant Greg Heiler of the Montrose County Sheriff's Department said in a statement, "The individual depicted in the photographs was questioned and he denied any involvement in Dale's disappearance. He also was able to explain to give us an alibi for the 27th of May, 1999. For the most part, that alibi is consistent and has been confirmed." They were back to square one. Dale's disappearance remained a mystery for 6 weeks. Then, in early July, a family enjoying a swimming and fishing outing in the local swimming hole hooked something large and metallic on their fishing pole. The object was submerged in 16 feet of water at the junction of the San Miguel and Dolores rivers, between Paradox and Uravan. It was Dale's white pickup. When the truck was pulled out of the depths, there were several things that were of interest to investigators. The windshield wipers were on, the ignition was on, the manual transmission was in a low gear, the wheel was turned at a very sharp angle, and the windows of the truck were partially open. Dale's wife Diana said that it was immediately apparent to her that someone else had driven the truck, as Dale always drove with the windows either closed or open, but not halfway in between. According to an article in the Colorado Daily Sentinel, the truck had entered the water at a right angle to nearby Colorado Highway 141, which authorities have said is virtually impossible if Williams fell asleep at the wheel. Tire tracks leading into the water showed no signs of braking. Marshal Matthew Goodemuth told the Colorado Daily Sentinel, "It appears that it was deliberately allowed to roll into the river." Investigators believe that the truck, buried to the hood in mud, had been there since Dale disappeared. Tools that were identified by the family as belonging to Dale were found in the weeks and months to come, scattered throughout Paradox Valley. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation joined in the search for Dale, and investigators examined every aspect of Dale's personal and professional life. But even after 21 years, no trace of him has ever been found. Investigators believe that foul play was at work in Dale's case. One of the theories as to where Dale could be is in one of the thousands of mine shafts in the area. Dale Williams remains a missing person. Dale Williams is a white male, 5 foot 7 inches, 170 pounds, with green eyes and brown hair and a beard. When last seen, he was wearing a blue t-shirt and jeans. If you have any information about the disappearance of Dale Williams, please call the Montrose County Sheriff's Office at 970-252-4039. Mike Morford sat down to talk with Dale's daughter, Toni Lawrence, for Missing Persons. That conversation is coming up after a word from our sponsors.
It's Wednesday night after a long day, and the last thing you want to do is cook dinner from scratch. But you still want a satisfying, tasty meal without the guilt? Enter your freezer's sidekick, Cauliflower. From thin and crispy cauliflower crust pizzas to all-natural white meat chicken tenders and crowd-pleasing snacks, Cauliflower satisfies every craving. Cauliflower's products are your favorite comfort foods, but made better for you and gluten-free always. The best part? You don't have to sacrifice taste or time, so you can honor your cravings without compromising. Craving pizza? You can enjoy Cauliflower's delicious margarita pizza for only 370 calories for half the pizza. Looking for easy snacks that kids and adults alike will love? Cauliflower's baked, never fried pizza snacks are nostalgia reimagined and ready in 5 minutes. Cauliflower's products are available in freezer aisles nationwide. Visit eatcauliflower.com/where-to-buy to find a store near you.
Let's be honest. Most of us have a love-hate relationship with wired bras. We love the lift, but hate the digging. We love the support, but hate feeling trapped. Well, Knix just changed everything with FreeFlex, a wired bra actually designed to work with your body, not against it. FreeFlex features a revolutionary flexible wire that moves when you move, bends when you bend, and keeps everything exactly where you want it. No poking, no stabbing, no constant readjusting, just freedom to move. It also has a demi-cup shape for a natural lift with a lower neckline that flatters in everything from V-necks to dresses. And because it's from Knix, it's available in sizes for every body. Experience the first wired bra you'll actually want to wear all day. Visit Knix.com for 15% off your order with FreeFlex15. That's KNIX.com, code FreeFlex15 for 15% off. Knix.com.
Hi, Toni, and thanks for coming on Missing Persons to speak about your dad's case with us.
Thanks for having me.
Your dad's been missing now over 20 years, and I can't even imagine what that journey's been like for you and your family. How do you keep going and talking about his case after so long?
Well, because the case it's very unique, I think, compared to like a lot of other missing persons cases. It happened in a super small town where people know everything about everybody else in your daily routines, and it just seems like something that would be so easy to solve, but because of maybe things during the early investigation has hindered that, so to speak. So I think that my dad's case is very unique, and of course, since he's my dad, we want closure. We want to know what happened. We want to see justice, and to be able to truly move on with our lives.
What's been the toughest thing to deal with through all of this?
I guess it would be not being informed as much as I feel like we should have been in the, not necessarily since the current investigator that's on the case. I think he does a good job, but those prior pretty much left my sister and I out of everything. And so that was very difficult. And I realized that, I was pretty young and quick to jump to conclusions and stuff like that when I was in my 20s, trying to just make sense of it. But had they have included my sister and I in what was going on, or just, letting us know what they know, those jumping to conclusions and things probably wouldn't have happened with me personally. But just being left out of everything and not, being asked, when was the last time you saw your dad, until stupid amount of years later, that has been the most hardest for me. And now that I feel like my sister and I have been really pushing this as much as we can to keep going, with the investigators, the CBI, I feel like had we been able to do that earlier, it may have made a little bit of a difference,
Yeah, and it's pretty standard when somebody goes missing. The police are normally going to look at those closest to them and ask them questions and then work their way out from there. So for them not to ask you questions right away is kind of surprising.
Yeah, my dad disappeared in 1999, and I wasn't asked the last time I saw my dad or talked to my dad until 2013.
That's very surprising, because usually family, friends, those closest to the person are the ones that are talked to first. And you mentioned some unique things in this case, and there are some really unique clues, and it's not like your father disappeared without some kind of little trail to follow. There were clues, there were developments, and we'll get into them as we go along here. But one thing I wanted to find out is, can you share a little bit about your dad? What he was like? What kind of person he was?
Sure. My dad was an amazing person. He, coming from a daughter perspective, he was a great dad. He made us laugh. He cared about us. He loved us. He showed that. He's very involved with his family. He's very involved in his community. He would give his shirt to the last person that he would ever want to, just to know that it would keep them a little warmer at night. And that's just how he was. He was very involved in his community and would help anybody if they really needed it or came to him.
Unfortunately, it seems like maybe that generosity or that generous spirit that he had may have been what started off the mystery of him vanishing when he received a phone call. Can you tell us a little bit about the circumstances of that phone call?
Sure. So my dad was in his shop with a friend, and they were playing darts, and his son was there. And my dad had received a phone call from a supposed stranded motorist out in the middle of nowhere, a little tiny town called Bedrock, which is between Natarita and Moab, Utah. And it's pretty desolate. It's rugged terrain and a deep valley that is in the middle of some pretty steep cliffs and mountains. And this is in 1999, remember. So supposedly the phone call came from a cell phone from this stranded motorist out in the middle of nowhere between mountains in 1999. And they needed help. So my dad said that, and this is coming, this is third person coming from his friend. He overheard the conversation, only on my dad's side, of course. So my dad would say, all right, I'll bring the wrecker out. And then he said, okay, I'll just bring the pickup out. So it sounded like the motorist needed a jump. And so he kind of let his friend know what was going on, and he left. And he stopped by Feral Gas and talked to his very best friend's wife, and he was looking for his very best friend, but he wasn't there. And his wife had said, oh, no, he's not here. And then my dad said, well, I just swung by to let you know that I'm going to get to your windshield on Tuesday. And she kind of thought that was strange, but she's like, well, all right. I mean, you didn't really have to drive all the way down here to tell me that, but sure. Okay, cool. And then she was the last person that saw him.
So, and just to recap, so your dad is a body man. He repairs wrecked vehicles, essentially. Not a mechanic necessarily, not someone who goes out and fixes cars that are broken down. But he gets this call anyway and wants to help. So he decides he's going to go out to this destination and see if he can assist this female caller.
Right. And it's assumed that it's a female caller because his friend, could kind of hear the way that my dad was talking to the person. It kind of was like he was talking to a female. The other thing is that this wasn't unusual. This isn't an unusual, call or request. Nuclear is at the time a 900-person town population, and everybody knows that my dad is fully capable of helping them jump, and that he would, and that he has a wrecker, and he would come out, no problems. Whatever he needed to do, he would do it. There's only a few places in Nuclear that have wreckers or offer any sort of automotive service, and my dad happened to be a body man who, worked on cars and was generous. And that's not saying that he couldn't work on, engines and things like that. It wasn't his specialty. He was a body man. He wasn't necessarily a mechanic.
So at the very least, he could try and help someone if for some reason he couldn't, he might be able to give them a tow basically to wherever they needed to go.
Right. But, he carried around tools in his toolbox that was bolted to the truck. If there was needing of some engine tinkering, he was very well capable of doing that in order to get the engine running again and going. I mean, he rebuilt my sister and I's first cars, from a wrecker. So he can do it. That just wasn't his specialty.
So he leaves there to go assist this caller, who is presumably a woman. And along the way, he stops off looking for his friend. He's not available. We talked a little bit before, and you got the impression maybe he wanted to bring your friend along because he had some kind of suspicion about the call, maybe?
Right. That's what I kind of feel like. There was some stuff going on that my parents were dealing with that obviously made them uneasy. And so, I think that maybe my dad was just being cautious and wanted somebody else to go with him. Or, he just wanted company. Steve and my dad were thick as thieves. They were really great friends and had grown up together. And his daughter and I are still very, very close friends. So, it wouldn't be unusual for him to say, "Hey, Steve, you wanna run out with me to go help this person?" That wouldn't be unusual. But I feel like that he was just being more precautious and wanted somebody to go with him.
Your dad leaves there. That's the last time he's ever seen. When did somebody know that something was wrong? Who was the first person to get an inkling that something wasn't right? Your dad wasn't where he was supposed to be.
My mom. It wasn't unusual for my dad to work late into the mornings, like 1 or 2 a.m. And when he hadn't come home by then, she thought that he was probably just still working. And the next morning, he still wasn't home. And she just started getting worried, got up about 6 and drove down to the shop. And it was completely unlocked. The lights were on. The car that he was working on, the hood was up and the doors were open, as if he was, planning on coming back shortly. But he never came. And so she went over to my granny's, which is my dad's mom, and got her up, and they started looking for him. They looked most of the day, and then in the evening reported him as missing.
And how quickly did the police jump into action. I know that you said that there were some shortcomings at the beginning as far as the investigation went, but did they take your family's concern seriously at the beginning, as far as you know?
I believe that the local authorities did. And I do think that because my dad was their friend too. And he grew up with the people that were police officers in the area as well. So I feel like that if my mom, called the deputy and said, "Hey, Dale hasn't been home. I'm worried. We've been looking. We can't find him." I believe that they would have taken it seriously and started in. What I don't feel like was taken seriously, outside of the whole way that missing persons cases are handled with the waiting period and my dad being an adult, it's very common knowledge to know that a department would say, well, he's an adult. Who's to say he just didn't leave? And so after that period, there was a good amount of support throughout the community for a search party of about 500 people or so. And that search party lasted 2 days with nothing. Like, the truck wasn't found, no tools were found, nothing was found during those 2 days. So when I say that there was shortcomings early on in the investigation, I am meaning after they found the truck. And when it had gone from a city jurisdiction to more of a county jurisdiction, I guess. And that is where I feel like things were slipped up on that could have been handled a little bit differently or maybe better. But again, I was left out of most of the investigation during that time. And I only know what happened through people that were directly involved at the scene during that time. So I think that the local authorities did a pretty good job. I think that the initial county and state did not.
And so you mentioned that his truck would be found, and we'll definitely get to that and talk about that. One thing I wanted to ask you about, because it's out there, I know I've read it in a couple different places. There's been a little bit of speculation that there may have been a sighting of your dad or his truck, I should say, back at his shop during the time that he went out for that call. And when your mom realized he was missing, can you clear that up a little bit?
Yeah. So my dad drove a white Ford pickup, and that's a pretty common pickup. And I think that the truck that people had reported on seeing was another gentleman in the community who had a very similar truck, same color, and my dad and he are friends, so it wouldn't necessarily be weird for this guy to park his truck in front of my dad's shop and run across the street, or even see if my dad was there. Maybe he needed to talk to him or something like that. I think that the truck that people are saying that they saw around 5 p.m. later that day was not my dad's truck. However, it could have been. There's nothing been really confirmed.
And that adds an interesting piece. If you say, for example, if it is your dad's truck, then he or someone else has driven it there, and why are they there? And that opens up a whole nother mystery there, because the next place your father's truck is found is submerged in water. Can you tell us a little bit how that unfolded?
Sure. The truck was found in the confluence of the rivers in Yerevan about 6 weeks later. around 4th of July. And it was completely submerged in a couple feet of silt at the bottom, and the water amount was well enough over the hood of the truck. So about 13 to 17 feet of water, somewhere in there. The truck was driven in at a low speed. It was like a four-wheel drive truck. So you could shift it into low 4-wheel and it would just kind of crawl itself wherever you were driving it. The wheel was turned all the way, I believe, to the left, and the windows were partially down. And the engine was on, the headlights were on, and the windshield wipers were on. So the way that it was found was a new family had been in the area or had moved to the area, and they were at the confluence swimming and fishing. And the lure got caught on the hood of the car. And so the boy at the time, who is my very good friend now because of this case, he went to release his lure and was standing on the hood of the car, and he had told me that he thought it was a refrigerator. So when he went down to release the lure in the water, he could tell that it was a vehicle. And he managed to get his arm inside enough. He was trying to get into the glove box to get the registration out, or to try to find the registration. But he was able to pull the dash cover off of the dash and bring it to surface, and it had said Pro Body Shop on it, which is my dad's. So then he ran over to Yametco, which is the closest building that had people in it, and called the cops to say that they had found the truck in the river.
So there's no sign of your father around. He's not in the vehicle. It's not like his body's found anywhere nearby in the water. Did they search for your father as if he may have gone in there in an accident, looking for his remains there?
Actually, they didn't, that I know of. So Levi had said that he was at the scene the entire time. And I have another very close friend that was at the scene the entire time when they were pulling the vehicle as well. They ended up having to pull the vehicle with a backhoe and got it out. And Levi had said to I guess, I don't know who was there at the time or what jurisdiction they were, but he had said, "Hey, there's stuff floating down the river. Do you want me to swim down and retrieve it?" And they said, "No, we have enough evidence with the truck." I fully 100% believe that. I heard that straight from the horse's mouth. And he was kind of taken aback about it. They didn't put up anything to catch stuff that was floating out of the truck, paperwork or anything like that I know of, or that Levi knows of. And yeah, they just let it go.
Which is surprising, because that could just be like his registration or his normal papers, but it also could be some kind of clues. Mm-hmm. What happened to him. That's very disheartening to hear that. So there's only two real possibilities. Your father has an accident, somehow drives into this water, but if that's the case, where's his body? The other possibility is that someone, your father or someone else, drove this vehicle in there to dispose of it. But the way you're describing it in low gear and everything else, it sounds like that's the more likely possibility, is that someone intentionally drove it into that water.
Right. And we definitely do not believe that my dad was the last one to drive that vehicle. He had some very peculiar things about him with driving habits. And one of those was how the windows were while he was driving. They were either all the way up or all the way down. He never drove ever with windows halfway up, or or halfway down, or even a portion of the way. He just didn't. That wasn't him. They were either all the way down or all the way up. Period. And these windows in the car were partially rolled down. And I believe that is so somebody could stick their arm in there and guide this vehicle in, and then the other window was rolled down to allow the water to flood the cab, and keep the truck down.
And you've got that scene there, but then also some of your dad's tools are found in a different location. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right. And actually, the toolbox that was on the truck was bolted to the truck, and it was not on the truck when they pulled it. And they have found tools in the past, and I believe they are still finding tools scattered about the hills in the opposite direction of where the truck was found. And they know that those are my dad's because either they have an engraving on them or my mom has identified them as his. I should say or my mom has identified them as his tools. So, that was strange. They did find the lid to the toolbox later, but not the toolbox itself.
And where was the lid found?
It was found in the river by some, I believe, kayakers. But yeah, this is like years later, or very like months and months later. This wasn't like an immediate thing, and they. Or something that I feel like it was kind of planted there, maybe. I don't know. That might be, some crazy conspiracy thinking on my end. But, I mean, things are either there or they're not. And that river in the winter, it goes down very low. And you can wade through it. You can walk through it. And in the summer, it's very high. So, I mean, there's no reason, if that lid was there before, why it wasn't found at some certain point in time. My dad had very close friends who still, to this day, 20 years later, will walk that river looking for something, looking for anything, or walk the hills. Or, when people are out in those hills and in Yerevan doing recreational things, some of them are still looking for my dad or a sign or anything. So there's no reason why that lid shouldn't have been found earlier if it was there when the truck was there.
And it makes you wonder, had they searched that river properly as soon as they found your truck, what would they or wouldn't they have found at that time? And you can't go back in time and do it over again, but it seems like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of missed opportunities, when they found the truck. But you're right, you can't go back. We can only go forward. And a lot of times it doesn't even feel like we're going forward, Well,
so let's talk about a subject that we sort of have to be careful how we approach. Your dad sounded like a popular and well-liked guy in town, somebody that didn't really have enemies or people that might have a motive to harm him, but there are things that are concerning. Can you talk a little bit about that in whatever way that you're able to?
Sure. Yep. So I know that you're referring to the ex-friend, and based on, the Unsolved Mysteries episode and stuff, I know that, people know that my dad and my mom had moved this ex-friend's ex-wife out of the area for her own safety and just to be, good humans to another human. And so they moved the wife away in the middle of the night, didn't tell anybody. And then, this ex-friend, he of course wants to know, where his wife is and yada yada, and nobody would tell him. Well, eventually my dad's shop was broken into, and they suspect it was by this guy because they found pictures of my dad and my mom and this other couple torn up of happier times and bullets scattered about. And it scared my mom. And, they figured they would just, go with the flow. He's mad. It's understandable, And then eventually my mom has a movie store, or had a movie store, and she had come into work one day and there was a missing gun that belonged to my dad in the drop box where the movies are returned. Then my dad, disappeared. And then flyers went up around town. And in the post office, my mom had noticed that these flyers were getting taken down. And she'd go over and put another one back up. A couple of days it'd be down again. She went back over, put another one up. And eventually she let the CBI know. Well, they put a camera in there to find out who was taking down these posters. And it was the ex-friend taking down the posters. And he really didn't have an explanation as to why he was doing it, from what I understand. Just that he was doing it. And that's as far as it went.
Obviously, I think police looked into this person, and for various reasons, they haven't arrested him to this point. And as far as you know, that's the only person that your family could think of that had any issues with your dad. Right,
personally. Right. The rumor mill is always running. So we've heard all kinds of rumors over the years. A lot of them are drug activity, and I don't think that my dad was involved in any drugs at all. My sister doesn't, especially dealing drugs. But I'm not going to say that it wasn't said, because it was said. And my best good friend, who pretty much helped my parents while I was growing up, my next door neighbor, she says that if my dad was involved in anything like that, she would have heard about it because she was a teenager, when I was little, and then in her 30s when my dad disappeared. So, Nuclear is a small town, and things. Things get out about people all the time. So people can tend to pick apart whether it's a rumor or not,
You're left to deal with all these rumors. There's people that you think may be involved, but there's nothing that solidly is enough to link them for an arrest to be made. Dealing with the rumors, and then above all, you don't have your father. So how all of that has had to been very rough on you over the last 20 years.
Well, to be honest, I was away at college, so I didn't even live in Nuclear. The people that had to take the brunt of this was my grandma, my sister, and my mom. And they, all of them lived in Nuclear during this time and had to face all of this on their own. Every day, the weird looks, the whispers, all of that. So, I feel like I got off a little easier on that than what they did, because I wasn't home during that time. But, my sister was, and it has affected her quite a bit.
And your mom still lives in the area too, so she's got to constantly be reminded and maybe hear some of those rumors along the way herself.
Yeah, I think they come up, every now and then, but I don't think that they're as abundant as they used to be. My mom has since remarried, and, it's been 20 years. And I think that most people know that everything that has possibly been able to be said, rumor-wise, has been said. And we've heard it. So, when people say things like, oh, you better not do that, or I'll throw you down a mine shaft like I did Dale Williams, or Dale Williams was the biggest drug king in Nucla. Those are things that may have affected us at one time, but now they don't. And I think that people use those kinds of things now with others locally. It's kind of like, it's a slap to, my family for people to use my dad's case as an empty threat, to other people when they had no involvement. And it's cruel behavior and words. But I guess that's people for you.
Well, and I think it seems like in your heart, your family knows that your dad just didn't run off and start some kind of secret life, some new life, and he's living on an island out there someplace. You think he met with foul play when he vanished?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, my dad was very much so a family man. His family on his side meant a great deal to him. I know that, my sister and I and my mom meant a great deal to him. And at the time, nobody wants to look forward to grandchildren when you have teenage girls, but I know that, my parents were looking forward to that when the time was right, and he would have really enjoyed that, being a grandpa. But there's no way that my dad, being the person that he is, would run off and live the good life while his girls are wondering where he is.
It's Wednesday night after a long day, and the last thing you want to do is cook dinner from scratch. But you still want a satisfying, tasty meal without the guilt? Enter your freezer's sidekick, Cauliflower. From thin and crispy cauliflower crust pizzas to all-natural white meat chicken tenders and crowd-pleasing snacks, Cauliflower satisfies every craving. Cauliflower's products are your favorite comfort foods, but made better for you and gluten-free always. The best part? You don't have to sacrifice taste or time, so you can honor your cravings without compromising. Craving pizza? You can enjoy Cauliflower's delicious margarita pizza for only 370 calories for half the pizza. Looking for easy snacks that kids and adults alike will love? Cauliflower's baked, never-fried pizza snacks are nostalgia reimagined and ready in 5 minutes. Cauliflower's products are available in freezer aisles nationwide. Visit eatcauliflower.com/where-to-buy to find a store near you.
Let's be honest. Most of us have a love-hate relationship with wired bras. We love the lift, but hate the digging. We love the support, but hate feeling trapped. Well, Knix just changed everything with FreeFlex, a wired bra actually designed to work with your body, not against it. FreeFlex features a revolutionary, flexible wire that moves when you move, bends when you bend, and keeps everything exactly where you want it. No poking, no stabbing, no constant readjusting, just freedom to move. It also has a demi-cup shape for a natural lift with a lower neckline that flatters in everything from V-necks to dresses. And because it's from Knix, it's available in sizes for every body. Experience the first wired bra you'll actually want to wear all day. Visit Knix.com for 15% off your order with FreeFlex15. That's KNIX.com, code FreeFlex15 for 15% off. Knix.com.
And what happened?
And that being said, has he been declared dead, or is that something that's being considered, or?
He has been declared dead. 5 years after he went missing, my mom was able to declare him dead in order to, get the small amount of life insurance that he had, so she could pay off, their debts and try to move forward a little bit in her life. So he has been declared dead. No, it wasn't my mom trying to get insurance money, just to clear that up for the people that would automatically jump towards that. And, that's something that my mom has had to deal with in order to move on for herself.
I think that's the ugly side of these kind of cases, some of those rumors and theories and stuff that just aren't true, yet the families have to hear them and deal with them.
Yeah. And really nobody will ever know what's that like. The people that run their mouths, they will never understand those feelings or being put in that situation, because it's highly unlikely that they will be in the same situation.
And what's your family's stance now? What are their hopes? Are they hoping to find your dad's remains so he can be given like a proper burial? Or are you looking for an arrest? Or do you just want to know what happened? Or maybe a combination of all that stuff. What is it that you're seeking after all these years?
I think that each of our family members that are still alive want different things. I think that my uncles definitely want justice. They want to see somebody, they want to see somebody held accountable for this. I personally would just like to know what happened. I would like to see some justice, especially if it was murder, in these circumstances, because it's the right thing to do, and it would put closure to something. I just don't know if I have a lot of faith that will happen, and until people start dying. And I mean, my dad would be in his 60s right now, which means that the people that might be associated with his disappearance are also in their 60s, 70s, and possibly people that know what happened are in their 70s and 80s. I mean, my grandma died without knowing what happened to her son. And, that's not very fair where life is concerned. Stuff like this shouldn't happen to people. And so I personally would like to see some justice, but overall, I just want to know what happened so I can put this, not so much behind me, but just a little more to rest than what it is currently in my life. And to give my dad proper burial and stuff, or that would be wonderful. But I really don't think that his remains are in an area that will be able to be recovered. I think that he might be buried in like a gravel pit or a uranium mill tailings pit, because that's what's around Yerevan, or in a mine air shaft. That's what my uncle believes. And the air shafts are quite a bit, they're pretty deep from like a surface entry, I guess. So it would be difficult to get anything in there to recover from some of these shafts. So, I think that whoever did this had some knowledge of the local area. And, there's thousands of mines up in those hills. There's big, huge mill tailing pits that are buried from Yerevan being restored. So, I don't know if they'll ever find remains at all, but I would like to have some sort of closure in his case as his daughter.
We'll definitely share this and get this out there as much as possible. And something you mentioned, people getting up there in age, maybe someone has a conscience, a deathbed confession, somebody that was afraid of someone else. If they pass away, they start talking. So sometimes after all these years, there is a break in the case because somebody talks finally, and hopefully that's the case here. That somebody that has information decides to share it for whatever reason. What is the status of the investigation now? Are police actively investigating it today? Still an open case?
It is an open case, and they will investigate any leads that they get, but there really aren't that many. And the leads that are coming in are the same things that, they've been dealing with for years. I saw Dale Williams at my next door's Christmas party, or I saw Dale Williams on a flight to Phoenix, or, wherever. So a lot of that stuff is just smoke, and I know it's frustrating for the investigators. I know that their resources are limited, and, they're working hard on what they can do. I know that they're trying to do justice for our family. And then I don't know, have you read or studied much up on Susan Powell case in Utah?
I'm a little bit familiar with it.
Well, I guess at some point in time, they had used some sort of camera scoping devices to search a bunch of mines up in the area. And, I don't know why that wouldn't be a possibility with our case, but I don't know if I'm going to bring that up to our investigator to see if they have done something like that. But as far as I know, they haven't searched any mines internally or, anything like that. So I don't know. I don't even know where they're at other than just chasing hearsay leads.
That's got to be tough to not have any solid directions to go in, but yet they've got to sort of weed through all these different things that they hear about to see if there's any kind of truth, even though it seems like there wouldn't be. I know you've been very active in talking about your dad's case and continually helping to keep it in the spotlight. What kind of things have you done to make sure that his name isn't forgotten?
They do quite a few memorial type of things on the anniversary, which I will participate in as much as I can. I don't live in Colorado anymore, so it's pretty difficult for me to get back there for those kinds of things. Like the CBI just had a missing persons. I want to say it was like a convention or something like that in Denver, where they read all of the names of the missing people in Colorado, which I think that's really cool. The team is really good about thinking out of the box on how to keep things, kind of up and stuff. And one of the really cool things that they had done that my sister and I really liked this idea, they printed a deck of cards with their unsolved homicides and missing persons playing cards. And they put the pictures of these missing people on the deck of cards, and then they distributed the cards into the prisons, and in hopes that they would maybe get something out of the people that were in prison. So they do that, and that's kind of they do some neat things to try to help as much as they can. Personally, I do a lot of podcasts recently, especially this last year and a half. I've done quite a few podcasts. We stay in contact with our investigator usually about every 2-3 weeks. We are texting back and forth with him. We had the cases on Unsolved Mysteries in the early 2000s. I heard that Netflix picked up Unsolved Mysteries again, And so I had put on Reddit actually for people to please submit my dad's case so we could get it back on Unsolved Mysteries when they start doing episodes. So I'm a big Redditor and have done AMAs on there. I'm on Web Sleuth. I try to do a lot of social media stuff, and I don't know if it's very effective, but it's effective to get people talking and sharing ideas with me on stuff that I might be able to do to help further the case in any way that I can. And for that, I'm very appreciative because I've gotten some really great suggestions and ideas like, go do this, go suggest this, go do this, or talk to this person about this. And I think that has been helpful, especially the podcast, because they reach so many people. The true crime podcast community is pretty awesome. There's a lot of people involved in that stuff. And I mean, I myself I have my favorite podcast that I listen to all the time and also, but I'd really like to go to CrimeCon. That was a big suggestion with the guys that did Maura Murray. Tim and Lance. Mm-hmm. And they're really great. I've been talking with them pretty frequently, and their team. They're part of the team for the private investigators for missing persons. So
they do great work. I mean, that's a really good organization. So that's a good group to be working with. And that organization was started by Bruce Maitland, who lost his daughter,
yes,
Brianna. Mm-hmm. It's good to have allies to help you with the fight. So
right.
I think the true crime community, as you mentioned, is sort of we want to be allies to help you. So whatever we can do to help keep spreading the word about your dad's case, we definitely want to do that. But I hope somehow someone out there, if they have information, to do the right thing and contact investigators in the case with any information they have. Who should they contact, by the way?
They need to contact the CBI. We are pretty active on our Facebook page for my dad.
Missing Dale Williams.
Dale Williams. And then there's also a website, whereisdalewilliams.net. The CBI is always taking calls, Crime Stoppers, anybody. We don't care who people tell. They just need to tell somebody. And it doesn't matter how big or little of information that they might think that it is. Even if it's the smallest thing, they still need to reach out and tell somebody or talk to somebody. I mean, it's not hard to find people on the internet anymore. And, it's very, very easy to find a phone number to relay this information to the people that need it. And I think that is one of I changed on our Facebook page, when 20 years came up last year, I changed the cover pages, to say it's time to talk, Nucla, because it really, truly is. There are people in Nucla that know what happened. I know there are. And I just can't fathom the weight of withholding this kind of information would do to somebody. I just can't understand how people would withhold information like this.
Yeah, I mean, that to keep that from a family that's been searching for their husband and father for all these years is hopefully they would do the right thing and come forward. And again, I can't thank you enough for coming on and discussing it with us. I know it's hard to rehash this over and over, but I hope somehow someone out there, if they have information, to do the right thing and contact investigators in the case with any information they have.
Well, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed talking with you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Missing Persons. If you can provide any information to help solve the case we discussed in this episode, we hope that you'll contact the appropriate authorities.
We hope that you'll tell your friends about Missing Persons. and invite them to listen to the show. Word of mouth will really help us grow. And if you'd like to help us reach new listeners, please be sure to rate and review Missing Persons on the platform you're listening to us now on.
We'd like to tell you a little bit about our Patreon program. If you visit patreon.com/missingpodcast, you can sign up to help this podcast through ongoing monthly support. As a thank you, we'll give you an on-air shout-out, a thank you card and sticker, plus you'll get ad-free early access to every new episode of Missing Persons, as well as any bonus content.
In this episode, we'd like to thank Hey Roy, and thanks to all of our patrons for their support. Your Patreon support also goes directly towards helping the missing, because every dollar that we earn through Patreon will be split with two worthwhile causes that benefit the efforts to bring missing people home: CharlieProject.org and Private Investigations for the Missing. Your Patreon support will really go a long way towards helping. We hope you'll consider supporting the show. Just a reminder, new episodes of Missing Persons drop every other Saturday. If you want to find us on social media, you can search Facebook for Missing Persons Podcast. We're also on Twitter with the handle @missing_pod. And of course, you can always find us on our website, missingpersonspodcast.net. As we wrap up, be sure to give a listen to this preview of a podcast I think you'll really enjoy. It's called Murderous Minors. Be sure to give it a listen. On behalf of Jess Betancourt, this is Mike Morford saying thanks, and we'll see you next time on Missing Persons.
Missing Persons is produced under the name AbJack Entertainment by Mike Morford and Jessica Betancourt. It's hosted by Mike Morford and Jessica Betancourt, with writing and research by Jessica Betancourt and editing by Mike Morford. Be sure to listen every other Saturday for an all-new episode of Missing Persons.
Just so you know, this show is about scary stuff. So don't say I didn't warn you guys. And remember, don't be scared.
Murderous Minors brings true tales of children who have killed. Premeditated murders, accidental killings and deaths. From toddlers to 18-year-old killers, no one is too young to take a life. Join me, War Baby, as I try to tell these stories of the young who've killed, the lives they took, and even the ones who've been left behind. Why do children kill? What do we do with young killers? And do they kill again? And until next time, don't be scared.